Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge, a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services focusing on the Port of Anchorage and the major commercial participants in the Cook Inlet region, providing customers with marine services specifically tailored to their needs.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks again for joining us for this Thursday's show. On the warning map here, we've got high to extreme fire dangers for the Copper River Basin. South winds 15 to 30 miles per hour with relative humidities at 25%. Makes for some pretty high fire danger through this evening. And then along the Alaska Range, those south winds in areas gusting as high as 60 miles an hour with humidities down in the low teens, down to around 12%. Central interior, southeast winds to about 20, creating the high fire danger there and pretty low humidities. And then north of the Yukon River, areas expected to experience gusts out of the east up to 30 miles per hour with those humidities again down in the lower teens. And this all improves by about 10 p.m. this evening. And for the breakup map, just chunks of ice now floating down the Yukon River. Porcupine open all the way to the Canadian border. And still have some ice here around Pilot Station. And then you get out toward, then it's open downstream from there. And then, of course, Amonix still frozen solid. And the Koyukuk River open here now. And the Noatak still frozen. And, of course, the North Slope River's still frozen as well. Looking at the satellite imagery, sunshine here all along the southeast coast. There were some low clouds that isn't showing up on the photos here. Right along the central and north coast throughout the day, the low clouds kind of spreading back to the west a little bit. But sunny skies, mostly sunny skies through the eastern and central interior, get into the mid and high level moisture right through here. And then you get into the rain out to the west here and all the way down into Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay. Some pretty good rainfall amounts. Kodiak picking up about ½ an inch in the last 24 hours, while Dillingham and Naknek picked up about 7/10 of an inch. Iliamna had 3/4 of an inch of rain, and farther to the north, Stony River was soaked with just under ½ an inch. And the Susitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula picked up about 1 to 2/10 of an inch, again in the same 24-hour period ending at 4 p.m. this afternoon. Lots of clouds here out over the Bering Sea. A few breaks there around St. Paul and St. George there today, and then down here between Nikolsky and Atka. Looks like it cleared out, but a lot of moisture out here to the west in form of clouds and some showers. And low pressure here south of the eastern Aleutians brought about 1/4 of an inch of rain into Unalaska during the day today. And of course, very wet conditions along the Alaska Peninsula as well. And here's the frontal system right across Kodiak Island into the southwest interior. Pretty gusty winds up along the Arctic coast, 15 to 35 miles per hour with gusts of 40 miles an hour on the east side there, with areas of snow falling on the western Arctic coast today. Barrow, Wainwright, Point Lay all reported snow today, and some areas of light rain through the northwest valleys. Mostly less than 1/10 of an inch falling here across the Seward Peninsula and the Yukon Delta, but a lot of sunshine, temperatures rising into the 70s here over the interior, and 60s to lower 70s over the southeast coast. A low keeping it kind of unsettled and damp there along the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians. And tonight that'll slide up to the north here into just about into Bristol Bay. So look for areas of rain and fog across the Alaska Peninsula up into the southwest interior, with the heaviest rainfall amounts here from Kodiak Island up in toward Kamishak Bay, again Iliamna in those areas. And then showery conditions here along the western interior. Cloudy skies breaking out to some variable mid and high level clouds over the central interior. East side staying clear, mostly clear skies all the way down to the North Gulf Coast and on down the Panhandle. Still some areas of low clouds, patchy fog here right along the coast, but otherwise staying pretty nice. And then those winds still gusting 30 to 40 miles an hour on the eastern Arctic coast, but beginning to drop off here on the west side with less gradient and the gradient continues mostly on the east side tomorrow. Still have brisk wind advisories for the central coast, but those gales gusts as high as 45 miles an hour there toward Demarcation Point, Kaktovik, and those areas. But the gradient is starting to slide off a little bit to the east there. Otherwise, another sunny and warm day here through the eastern half of the state with just variable mid and high level clouds through the central areas. Staying cloudy and showery there from the Noatak Valley all the way down to this frontal boundary. A little more numerous shower conditions here over Bristol Bay and the Kuskokwim Delta, kind of scattered here over the Yukon Delta to isolated. Rain still continues, periods of rain, southern Kenai Peninsula, western Cook Inlet up to the Alaska Range there, and then back down to the Aleutian Range. Starting to taper off, change over to more showers there for the southern part of Kodiak Island. Some scattered showers here along the Alaska Peninsula. And that next system bringing rain into the western Aleutians tonight spreads to the east central and then eastern Aleutians in toward Nikolsky during the afternoon tomorrow, with the Bering Sea kind of cloudy and showery there southwest to Shimei and Attu. And the southeast coast looking pretty good again, another sunny day, no change really, light northwest breezes along the coast. And for the Saturday outlook, no change there as well. Most of the shower and thunderstorm activity will stay in Canada. It may pick up a few residual clouds there along the eastern border, but should be another couple of very nice days starting the weekend out sunny and dry and warm here along the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound. Into south central Alaska, still have that varying amounts of mid and high level clouds with that south to north flow. And now just the showers up over the northwest part of the state, Seward Peninsula along the south coast, probably picking up some showers when the north side's dry, and then back into the Noatak Valley areas, the Kobuk Valley. Looking at a chance of showers there, and some scattered showers, isolated to scattered along the western Arctic coast. Otherwise, the eastern Arctic coast, losing the winds now completely, becoming variable in the afternoon here on the east side and pretty light the entire stretch of the way there. A little bit of a breeze possible over the Chukchi Sea, but nothing more than 20 miles per hour. And fairly light winds here through the eastern interior, some afternoon breezes, but another very good start to the weekend in that part of the state. Otherwise, here for the southwest coast, this front bringing rain and gusty winds into the southwest areas in Bristol Bay. Looks like south to southeast, 15 to 30 miles per hour. Small craft advisories here for the Alaska Peninsula, right up the southwest coast of Nunivak Island. Less wind to the north, less rain as well, and then that rain kind of wraps back in across the Pribilof Islands, all the way down to the central Aleutians there, that main low center. Otherwise, showers either side of the low center, and breaking out behind the front there for the Alaska Peninsula. Could see some sun in the afternoon for False Pass and possibly Cold Bay, King Cove, and those areas. Temperatures today along the southeast coast in the mid-50s along the coast there where the low clouds were at Sitka, to lower 70s, 71 at Juneau, 65 up at Skagway, with temperatures ranging from 58 at Cordova to 61 at Valdez, 66 at Gulkana, Northway 68, same thing at Delta. Fairbanks pushed up to 73 this afternoon, but clouds kept Tanana at 58, and then some clouds and a little bit of rain here farther west to Huslia and Galena, mid-50s there, but 75 at Eagle and 72 at Fort Yukon, 57 at Anatuvik. Bettles up to 62 today. Arctic coast, those east winds keeping it chilly, just 23 degrees there with the snow at Barrow, 28 at Etsuk and over at Dead Horse, 32 at Point Lay, and then 33 at Cape Lisburne. Point Hope closer to 40. Kivalina at 37, Kotzebue 46 degrees. Same thing at Golovin, while Nome had 40, 37 at Tin City with 36 at Gamble. Otherwise 59 there at McGrath with mid to upper 40s here over the lower Yukon and Kuskokwim River valleys. The deltas 40s as well, but upper 30s here right along the coast. Heading out to the southwest, St. Paul at 44, 46 though at St. George, mid 40s here for the Aleutians, and mid 40s to upper 40s here as you go northeast along the Alaska Peninsula to about 52 at Pilot Point, 50 degrees there at King Salmon, and 10 degrees colder out at Shimia. Low temperatures tonight in the 20s, lower 20s, about not much of a temperature change here tonight for the Arctic coast, to 30s over the North Slope, 40s through the Brooks Range, all the way into the central interior, otherwise upper 30s to upper 40s here through the southern half of the state, with mostly in the lower to mid 40s along the North Gulf Coast, Bristol Bay, and the Alaska Peninsula. Lows lower 40s to near 50 here across the Panhandle, and the highs for tomorrow, 40s for the Aleutians, near 40 there at the Pribilofs, mid 30s St. Lawrence Island, with mid 70s here over the eastern interior, with upper Yukon Valley again, Fort Yukon up close to 70 once again tomorrow. Lower to or 30s there along the Arctic coast, with 50s, cooler conditions here to the west with more clouds and showers around, down into Bristol Bay, lower to mid 50s there. And for the flying weather, good VFR, eastern Arctic coast, areas of VFR there, southward to the North Gulf Coast, but picking up some marginal VFR on the southern coast and east side of the Kenai Peninsula, much like today, and then up the west side of Cook Inlet there on the Alaska Range, Kuskokwim Mountains down to the Killbuck Range there, some marginal VFR. Mostly IFR tomorrow afternoon there, right along the coastline, Nunivak Island right in it, St. Lawrence Island in the IFR, and through the Bering Strait, but good VFR here across the southeast coast. Again, could be some marginal stuff right along the coastline there in the morning, diminishing in the afternoons. IFR pretty widespread there for the central Aleutians. Passes for Anaktuvik looking VFR conditions tomorrow, while Adigan looks VFR. Lake Clark, marginal VFR, lowest conditions, especially on the eastern entrance throughout the day tomorrow. VFR to the west, otherwise Merrill will be VFR on either entrance. And rainy looks good as well, VFR east and to the west. Windy VFR north and south. And for Isabel, VFR for tomorrow, north entrance and south entrance, both open. Same forecast from Antasta. Tanita, open conditions, VFR. And for Portage as well, optimistically VFR. Chance of seeing some marginal stuff possibly there in the eastern entrance. Otherwise, it should be kind of a VFR day through the pass. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR, both tomorrow and probably through the weekend as well. Freezing levels here, 8,000 feet from the southeast coast, right up into the eastern interior there, supporting those temperatures rising into the 70s again, cooling back to about 2,000 feet here through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island areas, another pocket of 2,000 foot freezing levels there over the Alaska Peninsula, and out over the Aleutians, right around 4,000 feet, 3,000 to 4,000 feet out to the west. Taking a look at icing, again, with that moisture sliding northwestward, could be some moderate rime icing here over the southern Kenai Peninsula, otherwise light to isolated moderate here in the yellow area, up into possibly the southern Susitna Valley. Another batch out here along the southwest coast, and then gets kind of broken up there over the eastern Bering into the Alaska Peninsula. And then more icing threats coming up with that system pushing eastward there, spreading the moisture over to the eastern Aleutians tomorrow afternoon, extending all the way back to Kiska Island. But the interior and the southeast coast icing free. And the reason for that, big area, upper level high pressure centered there over the southwest Yukon, north of the Panhandle. So that's directing, keeping all that moisture here in that south to north flow, 70 to 80 knots over the southwest interior out to the west. And this low farther in the Gulf, or farther in the Aleutians there, gradually working its way eastward, spreading moisture to the eastern Aleutians tomorrow afternoon and night. And for the 9,000 foot winds, pretty good wind max here, 25 up to 40 knots there across Kamishak Bay, 25 to 30 knots there, Yukon Kuskokwim Delta areas, and then back around to the southwest at 20. Over the interior, easterlies, light variable winds, 5 to 15 here over the southern coast and Panhandle, easterlies 10 to 20 through the central interior, and then still have that strong wind condition going there on the eastern Arctic coast, but lighter winds to the west, and southerlies 10 to 20 here across the eastern Bering Sea, central Bering, southerly 25 to 30 knots, then swinging around to the north out there over the western Bering and the Aleutians. And at 3,000 feet, much that same pattern here, southerlies 15 to 30 knots, strongest down towards the Unmak Island areas, otherwise southwest 10 to 20 along the Alaska Peninsula, southeasterlies, Kodiak Island, 25 to 35 knots there up towards southeast Norton Sound, and easterlies 20 to 40 knots there on the central and eastern Arctic coast, lighter winds on the west side, northerlies 20 to 30 out over the western Aleutians, and light variable winds there over the southeast coast, and also here kind of a east-southeast 5 to 15 knot breeze here over the southeast interior. And for turbulence, looks pretty smooth here in those areas, all the way down the Panhandle. Nothing serious expected at all. Those continued strong winds, mechanical moderate chop there widespread on the extreme eastern Arctic coastal areas, Kaktovik, the demarcation point, actually across the Mackenzie Delta there, and also from Fognak Island northwestward into the interior with that strong wind max, occasional moderate chop there, and also some afternoon mechanical turbulence here to the cross barrier flow there over the Chugach Mountains, turning an arm. Those gusty winds coming through tomorrow, expected to gust as high as 50 miles an hour in the higher elevations tomorrow afternoon. So throw some turbulence there over northern Cook Inlet, Kinnick, and Turnagain Arms. Otherwise smooth here over the eastern Bering. Occasional moderate chop, eastern Aleutians, smooth again. Then some more turbulence coming into the western Aleutians on north to northwest winds. And after the break of Stargazer, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Saturn, simply the best.
Hey there, stargazers. I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida.
And I'm Dean Regas, astronomer for the Cincinnati Observatory. We're here to help you find your way around the sky tonight. This week, we're going to focus on the most spectacular, breathtaking planet in the universe.
That's right. When I see this ringed world through my telescope, my heart skips a beat. It looks so unearthly.
Of course, we're talking about Saturn, and soon Saturn will be closest to the Earth for the year.
Meaning it'll be its biggest and brightest for the year. And we're challenging you to see the glorious rings of Saturn through a telescope this spring or summer.
Whether you have to beg, borrow, or buy a telescope, make it your mission to see Saturn up close. Let's show you. Okay, we have our sky set up for just after dark any night this week, facing southeast. As you look around the sky, you might not notice anything particularly bright. Saturn does not stand out in the night sky like Venus or Jupiter.
That's right, Dean. Saturn is very unassuming. It's on par with the brighter stars, but can sometimes blend in. This month, you can find it rising in the southeast. It's the brightest object in the area, but as the night rolls on, you'll see a bright, twinkly red star following it.
That's Antares, the red beating heart star of Scorpius the Scorpion. And that is the constellation Saturn will be hanging out in all season. It'll be near the Scorpion's head stars Graphias and Shuba.
You just wanted to say Shuba.
Yeah, you caught me. I will take any excuse just to say that star's funny name. Shuba.
Okay, now remember, this show is about Saturn.
Oh, right. Let's take a closer look at Saturn. Although to the naked eye, Saturn doesn't look like much more than a steady, glowing yellow star, it really comes to life when you look at it through a telescope.
Whenever I see Saturn for the first time each year, it takes my breath away. I think, is that even real? It looks like someone put a sticker on the end of the telescope.
I know, James. It almost looks too perfect. And you may even be able to see Saturn's largest moon, Titan, looking like a little speck of light.
Through a larger telescope, we can see Saturn better, and maybe even see some color. The younger and healthier your eyes are, the more color you will see. Students of mine can often see yellow, orange, and even a little green.
Through a big telescope, you can sometimes see 6 or 7 moons. Titan, of course, plus Rhea, Dione, Tethys, Enceladus, Iapetus, and maybe Mimas.
For a real close-up view, we're hitching a ride with NASA's Cassini spacecraft, which has been in orbit around Saturn since 2004.
Cassini is giving us views like never before of the storms on the planet, its 62 discovered moons, and the dynamic rings. When I was a kid and saw pictures of the rings, I had a dream that someday I would fly there and ride my bike around the rings.
That would make an amazing sight, but...
I know.
Although they look solid, like a road, the rings are made of individual bits of ice and rock. They're rings of gravel, tiny moonlets that circle the planet at varying speeds depending on their distance from the planet. Maybe you could pogo stick around the rings.
Well, I'll stick to flying because the rings are also unbelievably skinny. From ring tip to ring tip, they are hundreds of thousands of miles across, but in some places only 10 feet thick. That makes them the flattest structure in the solar system.
There you have it. Look southeast after sunset for Saturn. It may look ordinary, but it has an amazing secret life that we're just now discovering.
Make it your mission to see Saturn through a telescope this season. Behold the spectacular rings, the many moons, and let your imagination take you there. Although you can't tour the rings on your bike, you can hitch a virtual ride on the Cassini spacecraft.
Oh, the places we'll go when we keep looking up.
Welcome back. Well, southerly winds have pushed the sea ice northward to about this location here today, and over the next several days those continued southerly winds are expected to push it another 20 to 30 nautical miles to the north over or by Monday afternoon. On to the marine forecast, westerlies at about 10 knots here along the north coast of the Panhandle, westerlies at about 15 to the south, to northwest along the extreme south coast. Clarence Strait, northwest 20 knots, seas 4 feet, northwest 15 with 3-foot seas over the central inside waters, and southerlies at about 15 there for Lynn Canal, northern Lynn Canal with 3-foot seas. And taking a look at Saturday's forecast, light westerlies here on the north coast, central coast, small craft advisories northwest 20 to 25 knots, actually extending all the way down the coastline there. Northwest 15 in over the central and southern inside waters, and then afternoon winds at about 15 for Lynn Canal with seas running 3 feet. And for the Prince William Sound zone, easterlies at 10 knots with 2-foot seas. Northern Cook Inlet mostly east at 15, while down the south of the Forelands here northeast at 20. Small craft advisories here for the western Gulf Coast there across the Barren Islands and in Kamishak Bay. Those easterly winds up to 30 knots. Northeasterlies at 25 for Shelikof Strait, and southeast at about 20 there along the east side of Kodiak Island. And then for the Saturday outlook here, southeast 25 there for Kodiak with seas at about 8 feet. Shelikof Strait, lighter winds from the east at 20, and still small craft advisories here for Kamishak Bay, southeast up to 25, but light variable winds under high pressure here for the western Gulf Coast. And then on the east side of that ridge, westerlies at about 15. Light southerlies there for Prince William Sound, and a light southwest breeze for northern Cook Inlet, more southerly here south of the Forelands. And then for Bristol Bay, southeast 15 tomorrow, west 15 down the coastline there, and on the Pacific side of the peninsula, southwesterlies 20 becomes southeast 20, southwest of Kodiak Island. Those seas running at about 7 feet, 3 to 4 feet here on the north side. And then for Saturday, brisk wind advisories or small craft advisories here, 25 to 30 knot winds, mostly from the south on the Pacific side of the peninsula, southeast Bristol Bay, all the way down to Cape Sarachev. Seas running about 5 feet and then 10 feet to the south. And for the Aleutians, southerlies at about 15 for the Fox Islands, otherwise small craft advisories here, 20 to 30 knot winds, central and west central, the western part of the eastern Aleutians, small craft advisories, lighter winds back into the northerlies there at about 25 for the far western zone, and then that drops off and shifts over to the west a little bit on Saturday, and kind of a variable wind condition here through the central Aleutians, 25 knot winds coming around like that. And then southerlies to southeast, 20 to 30 knots across the Fox Islands, with those seas running 6 to 8 feet in the Bering Sea side of the chain to 10 to 13 feet on the Pacific side. And for the southwest coast, light variable winds north of Nunivak Island right up across St. Lawrence Island, southeast 15 here for the northern Bering Sea down across the Pribilofs, and looking at east winds at about 10 with 3-foot seas there for Kuskokwim Bay and the area south of Nunivak Island. For Saturday, southerlies at about 15 there for St. Lawrence Island, southeast 15, seas 3 feet through these areas. Small craft advisories here for the southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, 25 knot winds, seas building to 7 feet, southeast at about 15 for the Pribilofs, and northeast at 25 for the northern Bering Sea, those seas running at about 4 feet in those ice-free areas. And for the Arctic coast there on the east side, that's where the winds will be the strongest, easterlies 30 to 40 knots, tomorrow, coming down to 25 knots, so still brisk wind advisories for the central coast, and then east diminishing to 20 knots in the afternoon on the west side. And from Wales to Cape Thompson, southeast 15, next ends up there to Cape Lisburne as well. And then for the Saturday outlook, east 15 here in the west, Chukchi Sea up to the west there, as well as the western Arctic coast. Very light northeast winds, 5 knots to east 5 knots on the eastern Arctic coast. Southeast at about 15, a little bit more of a breeze over toward Kaktovik. And then for the forecast for tonight, mostly clear skies here over the eastern interior, all the way down the Panhandle. Look for some areas of low clouds and fog for the central coast, up back around to Yakutat, possibly to Cape Yakataga. Otherwise, variable mid and high level clouds. Mostly cloudy, cool and showery here in the west, with rain periods of here from the Kuskokwim Delta down across Bristol Bay. Heaviest rainfall amounts again Kodiak Island up in toward Kamishak Bay, with even some light rain continuing here over southern Cook Inlet and the southern Kenai Peninsula and western Cook Inlet. Then a break in the right through here, and then that next storm spreading rain into the western Aleutians. We'll see tomorrow spreads to the central Aleutians and then into the eastern Aleutians, but probably not making Unalaska until tomorrow evening. Otherwise, a lot of showers back behind and to the north over the Bering. And then this front low pressure lifting northward to Kuskokwim Bay, and the gradient between that low and this high is going to kick those winds up. Anchorage hillside, possible gusts of 50 miles an hour, 20 to 30 with gusts to 40 there through Turnagain Arm. Periods of rain, southern Kenai Peninsula, western Cook Inlet, down to Kodiak Island, starting to change a little more showery tomorrow afternoon and evening, but showers over Bristol Bay, right up the coast there, and a ways inland across the Seward Peninsula. More isolated to scattered showers up over the northwest, but another sunny, warm day, temperatures in the 60s to mid-70s over the eastern and central interior. And no change for the southeast coast, both Friday and Saturday. Those showers will stay over in Canada. Fair and warm in the east, cooler and showery with rain over the southwest. Have a great evening, and thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.